up, guys? Keith, aka Gator Guy 231, here to break down another big EPL showdown. Today's between Brighton and Manchester United. Hope you all did get well yesterday. It was awesome to see the 15 fill with a little bit of time to spare. And there was just tons of contests. It was awesome to keep seeing, $5 singles open up. Saw the 10 open up a couple different times. And this, I'm talking about double ups where, I really do enjoy cash games in that strategy. Few 25. So it was good just to see. Let's do it again today. I just wanted to bring up one point yesterday. I thought PVA's ownership, Patrick Van Aanholt's ownership, when Townsend was in, was interesting. I thought that Townsend presented a serious risk to Van Aanholt's corner duties. And, for GPP, I got off of a decent amount of Van Aanholt, just thinking that if Townsend jumped over there to corners on the left, Van Aanholt at 8K was definitely overpriced. Still was fine with Luka pretty much everywhere getting the other corners. Funny enough, McCarthy came in at half, took away Luka's corners. He just still did fine. And then when Palace was really pushing the game, Van Aanholt got them back once Townsend subbed out. But I don't think he took a corner before then. Not even sure if Townsend did. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch. But it's just one of those things, when lineups come out, it's so important to understand the situations and, how they could affect, especially for GPP. In cash, Van Aanholt didn't hurt you one way or another. He was so highly owned. But in GPP, if you faded Van Aanholt, it was the highest owned player on the slate. I think it was close to 74%. You had huge leverage because he did not have a good game. So anyhow, let's keep that in mind as we go into today. So let's start as we always do with the odds. So we have Manchester United away to Brighton. Brighton usually another team that I really like targeting at home, but without the crowd, it takes away a little bit. But United is minus 161. Been arguably one of the best teams of 2020 since the Fernandes signing. And he should be the focal point of the attack and all of your DFS lineups today, assuming he's in. I think there's a 1% chance that he doesn't play, just, playing every game since and playing all 120 against Norwich. But I'm expecting to see him there in his normal number 10 role. Brighton, and he takes a true monopoly of sets for United these days. Brighton's plus 443 at home. Brighton sets are always quite fun. If Pascal Gross is in, he's going to take pretty much most of them. Aaron Moy always can jump on a few. Sally March is in. The Gross and March ends up being a split. And then McAllister, their Boca Juniors loanee, took last week while it was in versus Leicester, took some when he subbed in the game before that. And depending on the lineup, if he is in, let's say, over a Gross, I think that you would have to give him some of those sets. All right, let's go and talk about the players, introduce you to, some projected lineups. I do think there's some issues with this lineup that Sofa is showing us. Let me see if I can just make this bigger. There we go. And I'll go over that right now. So let's start on the United side, which is going to be a lot more familiar. So Bruno Fernandes, from a DFS perspective, he's already become a top 3 to 4 EPL player, probably one of the best floors in the EPL. Shoots a ton, takes all the sets. It's just an awesome playmaker. If he's starting, you're locking him in almost any lineup. The only time you might be fading him is if you're playing a ton of different GPP scripts and you want to fit Martial and Rashford together. You probably would need to fade Bruno if you're going to want one of those as a captain, and that's probably the only situation that I can see it happen. And I'll talk about some scripting later. For today's kind of agenda, go through, whatever the hell you want to call it, agenda. I'm not a teacher. Anyhow, going to go over the players. I'm going to do some scripting again. Thank you all for the comments on that. I guess people liked that. And then I'll kind of take a stab at ownership again. It was pretty cool. I did all right on the ownership yesterday. I think we got a ton of that right. So just kind of give you an idea again. All right. So anyhow, Bruno, lock, go. Big decision of the slate is if you go Martial or Rashford. I'm going to be Team Rashford from a wide position. Love when he's out here cutting in on the right, especially because Brighton, I do notice, ends up lighting up a lot of longer shots. So I am Team Rashford over Martial, but I do think that there'll be a lot of people that go the other way, especially off of Martial's hat trick. But Rashford loves taking guys on one-on-one. Occasional cross. If for some reason that Bruno wasn't in, you might see Rashford on sets. Again, I don't see that happening. Draws fouls. Anyhow, Rashford, pretty solid floor player with big upside. Martial, on the other hand, is Mr. Goal dependent for United. He scored 3 goals last game, and without the goals, so if you want to give him the shots, which is fine, he would not have hit double digits. 3 goals were worth 36 DK. He ended up with 38. That is, he's a striker. He's not like a huge volume shooter. He's not taking a ton of people on. He's there to score goals, and when he does, it works out great. But a very, very talented player. But for me, it's going to be more GPP. Daniel James is underpriced on the slate. He's only 4,800. Make sure my memory serves. Yep, 4,800. So one thing that is interesting is Daniel James, since Bruno's come, has definitely looked lost on the field, especially when you have Rashford over here. The focal point of the attack is these two. So Daniel James is kind of that forgotten man. That said, sub 5K for an attacker on a favored side, always can show up with a goal. Good young player, does not mind crossing the ball. Again, the big thing, though, is since January, when Bruno Fernandes came in, we have 3.7, 2.9, 2.5, 4.9, 5.7, 2.4, 9.6, 6.1, 2.9, 0.8. And a decent amount of those were starts. So no goals, no assists in that time. So again, just kind of off the pace of what he was before. That does not mean that, he can't show up here. Matic, no, never for DFS. Maguire, Bailly, go for it. Maguire, obviously is going to be triple, quadruple the ownership of Maguire. I do think this is Victor Lindelof, who really is not nearly the set piece threat that Maguire is. So again, even if it's Lindelof or however you say his name, he'll be, Maguire will be 20% owned, and this other center back will be 10% or less. Paul Pogba, I think, is one of the most mispriced players in slate, and I love him today. So let me talk to you why. 6,000 for Paul Pogba, coming off of playing 80 minutes. So if Paul Pogba at full fitness is, whether people want to admit or not, a top 25 player in the world talent-wise, might be top 10. And with Matic, and if you see Matic, or even if you see McTominay, that's going to be the type of partner that's playing in the 6 role that gives Pogba a lot more freedom to move forward, to be more involved in the attack. And then, one thing that you just love about Pogba too is just he is one of the better passers in the world, and he can pick a pass over the top. And, when I think about tactically Brighton, you give Graham Potter some credit and also some pause in the fact that he is always willing to attack. You give him some credit because you're like, hey, I appreciate you playing entertaining football and trying to give the team a chance to be competitive week in and week out, not going, this is Manchester United. I'm going to sit, in a defensive block and wait for a good time to counter. But then when, it goes sideways and, you've let in a couple goals, you just go, we were way too attack oriented. We never really had a chance. And, that's a chance. So when you commit too many numbers forward and Pogba floats a 40-yard ball over the top of you and Martial or Rashford runs onto it and it's an easy goal, there's where the tactics let you down. So, with that said, I can see Paul Pogba picking a number of passes, unlocking the defense. And at 6K, I just think there's too much upside for his talent not to be very interested and have a lot of ownership. And I think he will be very highly owned. The biggest mistake or the biggest, thing I don't agree with so far on this is I don't see how this is not Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka has been one of the better right backs in the EPL, getting a lot more involved in the attack for United than he was for Palace. So fine cross for the ball, but Bissaka, really, really can get there with tackles. Sometimes it matters what Opta score you get. We can see some of these Opta scores give It's very, very soft tackles, but Bissaka never minds putting his foot in there. Just to give you an idea of Bissaka's kind of floor, here is the last. I'll go back to January 22nd. So 12.4, 15.3, 12.7, 8.8, 4.3, 11.3, 8.6, 13.9. So really in that 8 to 10 range over and over for 6,600, I think is a really, really nice cash play. We should see him very highly owned. On the other side, I think there's a good chance that Brandon Williams does start left back over Luke Shaw. Luke Shaw did start on Saturday versus Norwich. Played all 120. Williams did sub in here over the right for Delo. But good player. I was a little disappointed in his price. I was hoping it was a little bit cheaper. He's 5,800. But, he's fine. Just not as funny thing is like Wan Bissaka is a better defender and a better attacker. But Williams does, cross the ball a little bit more than Luke Shaw. So he's fine. David De Gea, they did a little bit better job of pricing. He's up at 7,800. Yeah, 7,800. Kind of like I've said yesterday with goalies, there's no wider range of outcome at goalies. So let's say that you say United's going to win 2-1, but De Gea doesn't get a save. Okay, so 2-1. Neil Mape scores on him, but nobody else is getting a shot on target. Even with the win bonus, De Gea gets 3 DK, 7,600 or 7,800. You are dead. Now, in that same scenario, let's say that United wins 2-1, but De Gea gets 5 saves. Well, 13 DK. That's perfect. We're fine. It's going to be hard to have anybody in that range score that much. Or they win 2-0. He has 5 saves. There's 20 DK. So you can see the range of outcomes here are huge. That he can, with a winning clean sheet, scores a goal. So just know that going in. I played a lot of both Pope and Guiata yesterday. The Pope stuff worked. The Guiata stuff not so much. But it's kind of that trade-off that you're going. You're risking some potential negative results for a huge positive result. Very similar to rostering a striker. So, that's United. Let's go over to the Brighton side and introduce you to some of their players. Sorry, you guys don't need to see me quickly blowing my nose. All right. So let's kind of just talk about like all the different ways that Brighton can go, because they have a pretty big depth of attacking. I can't even say that right. They have a lot of attacking depth for a team that's, mid to low table. So Neil Maupay is probably going to be the constant. He's the best striker on the team. In softer matchups, does like to shoot a ton. But to here, he'd be mostly GPP oriented for me as a solid dog, but a good striker. So over here on the right, you could see anywhere from Solly March. You could see Trossard. Trossard normally plays on left, but you could see Pascal Gross. You could see Aaron Moy actually out here. You can see a lot of different ways. So let's talk about if it is Solly March, he would get a share of sets. Good DFS player, but he's just like almost like guaranteed to sub. He's just kind of been in Graham Potter's doghouse seemingly all year, but a solid play, and he is only 7,200. So I think he's a fair play. If it is Pascal Gross is, I feel like anytime I personally have rostered Pascal Gross, and this is like terrible analysis, so you should probably skip ahead. Anyhow, if you're still staying around for terrible recency bias, all that good stuff analysis, every time I feel like I roster Pascal Gross, especially after like decent games, it is just a tilt shit show. He almost takes all of the Brighton sets. He is a good set taker on top of that, and a good crosser of the ball, but he is just a guaranteed sub by Potter. I personally don't know why. It might be like defensive work rate, these things, but Potter loves to sub the man. And, the moment that you think he's going to do well, he does terrible. All the matchups that you think that are just absolutely treacherous, I have to stay away from, you go back and Gross just destroys it. So I don't know. It's tough. This probably is a matchup that you think he should do terrible in, which means he probably will do well. But that's terrible analysis, right? Like, because the matchup is shit, I should play a guy. Anyhow, for those that want to come back, here we go. There's Pascal Gross for you. But again, just know that he's going to be on almost all the sets. So if you want him to be one of your Brighton pieces, go for it. I'm going to be more than likely, if I'm spending that much, looking for a United piece myself. Leandro Trossard, really nice technical player. Does not really have any more sets anymore, and I don't think they've adjusted his price yet. 7,400. So I'd probably want to go March or Moy over him. Speaking of Aaron Moy, so more than likely we will see him in this defensive role, or kind of defensive. He's just given license to run anywhere. But if you don't see if this is the lineup, he would split corners with March. If you saw McAllister, you still potentially see a split. McAllister took most last time, but Moy always is a threat to take in swinging corners, get some tackles, take a couple shots, and Potter just seems to like him a lot, probably because his work rate is so high. So just know that that's probably the safest Brighton play in that midfield to attacking role. If Basuma and Davy Proper have a lot of defensive responsibilities, both are fine, but again, defensive guys more so than attackers. Dan Burn is a converted center back that plays left back. He is okay, but will not be a play for me most likely at 4,400 unless I'm stuck there. Dunk and Webster got injured, so I do think it will be Duffy. They are both aerial threats and both set piece threats. So there's some really nice correlation that I'll talk about in a minute. If you wanted to do like Moy, Gross, or March, maybe pairing them up with one of these guys, similar to kind of what I talked about yesterday. Personally for me, I went way too much Tarkowski versus me. Had me in a few lineups, but said that there was a good chance that the only Burnley goal would be off of a set piece in those aerial threats. That was the only goal. You could very well see the same for Brighton with Lewis Dunk or Shane Duffy getting on the end. Finally, I've been bearing the lead. My favorite play on Brighton is Tarek Lamptey, former Chelsea product that signed permanently with Brighton in January. He is only 3,200, which is nuts. Coming off a really, really nice game versus Leicester. 6.8 DK, threw in 2 crosses, couple tackles, couple interceptions. Just a really nice player, super fast. Love watching, these young kids that are, you can just tell they're going to be guys that you're going to watch for years to come. I think Lamptey definitely fits the bill, and 3,200 for a fullback, give it all to me. That's such an easy way to get Brighton exposure, and for prices that you're supposed to be paying center backs for to get a fullback. I really hope he's in. If not, it'll be Shaletto or maybe even Montoya. What's Shaletto's price? Shaletto is 3,000, so that would be an easy swap. But Montoya is 5,000, so that'd probably be going away. Matt Ryan, I just want to talk about real quick. He's going to go, I don't know when to use the word underowned. If De Gea is 30%, Matt Ryan might not be over 10, especially with everybody loading up on United pieces. But these dog keepers potentially even have a even wider range of outcome than the favored guys because they're going to see so much more action. So if you roster Matt Ryan, who's sub 5K, but let's say you roster him and United still scores 2 goals. If he gets 5 saves, that's 60K. And for sub 5K, you're fine with that. But on the off chance that he gets 7 saves and it's a 0-0 draw, hell, that's 19 DK. Nobody on the slate is going to score 19 DK in a 0-0 game. Maybe Bruno, but be pushing it. But from a point per dollar perspective, you will have the best play on the slate. So just keep that in mind in strategies, especially if you want to do a United onslaught line where Bruno is crossing the ball a ton, Rashford shooting. You do Bruno, Rashford, you do Wan-Bissaka, you do Paul Pogba, you do Matt Ryan on the other side, and just whatever fits. Brandon Williams, something like that. If United is just controlling the hell out of the game, just has Brighton pinned back, but Ryan stands on his head, just ship you the GPP. So let's talk about those strategies and kind of what you could do. So let's talk about the United. So let's see if they have win 1-0. Let me just say in all these, Bruno is the first guy in, and most likely your captain as long as it fits. But you just need to decide who the goal is going to be. So, outside of Bruno, who's a great chance to score, I think Rashford, Martial, Pogba are probably your most likely scenarios. It's really easy to slide Daniel James in there because of prices. So, on the off chance that he's part of the assist or the goal, I think it makes a lot of sense to get exposure to him. And then I'm going to have a lot of Wan-Bissaka. So know that out there. 1-0, you really want to give a lot of thoughts to David De Gea because, again, that's a minimum of 10 DK. Brighton, again, are not a team that really does like to sit back. I still think they're going to get a few shots on goals. So there's a good chance in a 1-0 game, De Gea is named with 14 to 16 DK, and you want him. And this is GPP. But I think in a 1-0 or 2-0 type of game, anything that ends with like United wins and there's nothing, I think De Gea probably wants to be in your lineup. Correlate him some with Aaron Wan-Bissaka. If you want to go really off the board, correlate some Bruno Fernandes with Harry Maguire and David De Gea. That gives you a lot of upside. If Maguire, scores on a header, he will be a little bit more owned than a center back should be. But, you're going to be more contrarian if you have it with like David De Gea and you also have Wan-Bissaka. So then when everything's happening, at the end, you're going to maybe get like 16, 19 bonus clean sheet points. That'll be nice for you there. 2-1 is where you probably immediately want to start fading David De Gea. I really do think that you're going to need that clean sheet bonus to really make this work. And maybe you just roll out Fernandes, Rashford, Wan-Bissaka, Pogba, and run it back with Neil Maupay. He's most likely Brighton player to get on the end of a goal. So let's talk about the Brighton stuff. Any sort of Brighton stack is going to be led, in my opinion, with Matt Ryan. If you think Brighton wins this game, Matt Ryan needs to be locked into your lineups because of his ownership and because of his ceiling if they do win. There's almost no way if they win 1-0 or 2-1 or something along those lines, to me, that Matt Ryan does not have double digits with the amount of shots that the likes of Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford are going to be willing to put on him if United is down. So just keep that in mind for Brighton. Most logical score is Neil Maupay, but if you really want to get kind of intriguing, I think the stack that I mentioned, and you can still get expensive United pieces, but do Matt Ryan, pair with one or both of the center backs and maybe the set taker, and then go back with like a Bruno and a Marcus Rashford who can get, double digits without a goal. So I think those are kind of my favorite game scripts or, stacks / building processes. Those are the ones that make the most sense to me. Finally, let's just talk about ownerships. Bruno Fernandes is going to be like well over 80%, maybe even 90%. Be the top owned player on the slate. Marcus Rashford will still be the second most owned player on the slate, in my opinion, due to name notoriety and the fact that Martial is more expensive. Now, I think Martial comes in after him. And Rashford's probably in that 50-60% range, maybe more. Martial just a hint under. I think after that, I do think it'll be either Wan-Bissaka or Paul Pogba, both in that 40 to 50% range. My lean is that Pogba goes more owned than Wan-Bissaka just because his name is Paul Pogba. But again, both of them in that 40-50% range. If they're higher, I will not be surprised. From there, I think there's going to be a drop-off to Gea. I think, likely into GPP in the 30s. I'm a lot lower owned in cash than Kiata was yesterday. Williams, if he starts, will probably be in that 20 to 30% range. Daniel James, similar to it. I do think Harry Maguire also shows him that range, 20 to 30%. And then Lindelof or Bailly, whichever one starts, won't be highly owned. Matic won't be owned. And that would be the United side. On the Burnley side, if Gross is in, he's probably – okay, actually, Tarek Lamptey, if in, will be the highest owned Brighton piece, especially in cash, will be well over 50%. In GPP, I think you'll see him come in that 30 to 40% range. A lot of people just still don't know the name, but he should be owned. I think Moy, if there's no Gross, is the other high-owned Brighton piece, just a good player. If Gross is in cash, he'll be a lot more owned in cash than GPP. I don't really have a good gauge on him in GPP, but maybe like 20-30%, somewhere along there. And I think any of the Brighton attackers probably in that same range, 15, 20, as high as 30. So Maupay, Trossard, March, throw her in. Matt Ryan probably coming in 10 to 15% range, which is why I think that it's such a good play to shoot for his upside. Anyhow, I just want to thank everybody once again for tuning in. Been an awesome run. The channel keeps growing, so thank you. Make sure that you hit like, subscribe, comment. All that stuff really helps. And we will see you all back tomorrow for the massive EPL slate. We finally get some classic soccer back in our lives. It's going to be fun. Take care today, guys, and I hope somebody takes it down.